This is my first quarter sprint video explaining a variety of things related to the project I'll be working on throughout the quarter in this class. So the first category I'd like to discuss are the project goals. So what is the goal of the project I'm working on? So in a broad sense, the goal of the project is to leverage communities of people engaging in their everyday routines to purchase and deliver items um, with minimal disruption to what they would be doing normally. So pretty much, how can we maximize the efficiency of these on-the-go crowdsourcing systems um, while not disrupting the helpers as much as possible? And then, what's the motivation of the problem? So the motivation of the problem is to make systems like this viable, and to improve on existing on-the-go crowdsourcing models and see if there are certain incentives or features we can put into place that'll generally make these platforms better. So down to specific quarter goals, the real hard, tangible deliverable is to create an iPhone application with some kind of backend, either Node or Python, uh, that can leverage a community of people while incentivizing and making possible their engagement in this crowdsourced grocery platform. So what that would involve is each user has an individual list, and when other users walking by in the vicinity of a store that carries an item on the list, they would, based on some criteria, either be notified or not be notified to pick up the item. So, and then we would have to use existing literature and new methods like the relay methods to get those items back to the person who originally ordered it. So, if successful, what would the work be you plan to do for this quarter? So, for consumers, the people ordering the items, really the overall goal is to be able to receive items on their grocery lists within a reasonable period of time. You know, you shouldn't have to wait a month to get everything on your grocery list. Um, and you shouldn't have to travel an inordinate distance to meet up with the person who ideally would already be coming towards you and moving in your direction. Um, so that's really the main goal for consumers. For helpers, they should have some incentive to participate in the system. There should be some reason that they're going out of their way um, to walk into a store and purchase an item on the behalf of another member of the community. And they should be able to engage in the system with minimal disruption. So we should make it as not a drag as possible for these people to go into the store, whether that means providing information on where the item is in the store or improving the delivery method back to the original person through relay methods. We want to make that as streamlined as possible in our platform. And third demographic are the actual designers of future on-the-go crowdsourcing systems who, ideally after we've completed our research, will have some kind of guideline, a set of guidelines on how to architect a successful on-the-go crowdsourcing system. So those are really the main goals for the quarter in a general sense. And then part three, so design goals. So what's the user problem? Users should be able to help one another in an on-the-go setting, but the proper technologies do not exist to leverage these communities, and the proper incentives are also not in place. Yeah, so that's really the main problem and what we're aiming to work towards solving. Now, what is our design argument? So, three parts. We've got the outcome. On-the-go communities should be simple to engage in as a helper and simple to benefit from as a consumer. So that is the ideal outcome, is that it's simple and non-disruptive to use from both sides of the equation. Now, the obstacles. Well, the technology, the algorithms to actually coordinate people in such a way that they can solve these problems, and the actual just platforms, they don't exist at the moment to leverage efficiently these kinds of crowds in a real-time delivery system. So the more we can erode the barrier of inconvenience, the more efficient these on-the-go systems and the more plausible an actual, in production on the go system will become. So now, what are the characteristics? We actually have not gotten to the point in our research where we are sure on what the solution to a lot of design problems would be. So we're still at the phase where we're identifying these problems and just kind of working all the way through, the user experience and seeing where are the risky interactions happening and how can we mitigate those risks. So, design process. So the idea is to design this application, paper test some ideas from the mocks first, and then within this first sprint, go straight into a deployed iPhone app that will be able to, user test, get feedback on, and then iterate from there, finding what works, what doesn't, what could potentially work, and continue in such a fashion. And what does the timeline look like? So the idea is to build some kind of functional system by the end of this quarter, with insights that we've gained from iterating over it through the quarter. And then next quarter, we're aiming to have a more refined version that could potentially be used to conduct a study. So who will we test on? How will we recruit? I don't have much experience in this area, but DTR students certainly at the beginning. When we need more, we could move into the EECS department and more generally post, signs, would you like to be part of a trial group for a certain amount of money? Yeah. So technology goals now. What will your technology do by the end of the quarter? So the idea is to create this iPhone app that has a nice interface for people to use. And then, concurrently with that and concomitant is the server that the app will be communicating with, whether that'll be in Node or, using Django or Flask. That's still something I need to decide. So what are the components? So a mechanism to incentivize participation within the application. Ideally, people would want to participate to make the community better and for the, implied reciprocity of them potentially being able to leverage the very same system. But I believe that you could make certain interface changes or, just features of the app highlighting certain pieces of key information that would improve the overall follow-through and engagement with the app. So, the backend needs to handle real-time location data. That's always a challenge, to leverage. So I'll be definitely needing substantial help on that. Okay, so last but not least, the research goals. So what research questions are we, what's the point? What are we even trying to answer this quarter? So main question, in a very broad sense that we're aiming to answer is how can we minimize the amount of disruption to helpers and consumers in on-the-go crowdsourcing platforms? So what changes can we make to these platforms, the way they operate, that make them more efficient and make them feel more seamless for people to use? So that's one of the research questions. 2, how does the user context affect their propensity to respond to notifications to help in the system? So user context can mean a lot of things. I think Yang Sung brought up to me the idea of maybe being with a group of people. How does that affect your propensity to help? Specific to this use case, maybe how does being actually shopping in the store when you get this notification, how much more likely does that make you to follow through and help than if you're walking past the store? And I would imagine very much more likely. So that, the context, though, is another aspect of the research question. And then another question is how can we engineer the actual notifications to maximize follow through? And I think this is maybe a more specific research goal than it needs to be, and belongs almost as a subcategory. But anyway. So what are your hypotheses? So it seems like personalizing the notifications in the system. So another thing Yang Sung brought up, maybe if we say, hey, this person in your friend group needs this item, or this person who has been very active helping needs this item, you'll feel more compelled to walk into a store and do your part to pick up the item for them. Implementing a relay system, that was a big part of the earlier discussions that we decided might have to wait for a while, but I think once we have that kind of system in place, it'll very much improve the viability of an on-the-go system, especially over a large area where people probably aren't going to be going all the way from where they happen to be to some far off desired location. Yeah, and then keeping track of user context will go a long way in improving existing on the go crowdsourcing methods. Yeah, so how will we confirm or reject it? In the case of this grocery application, we can test all kinds of hypotheses by A/B testing within one group of subjects and seeing how their engagement in the system differs between trials. Or we could get two different groups of people, some with features, some without, and compare the two different groups. And then it'll be interesting to see what feature we decide to kind of make the core characteristic of our design goal. And I think as I look more into this project and what there is to improve and what the shortcomings of existing systems are, I think that'll become clear. So yeah, that is Sprint Video 1. Thank you for listening if anyone actually watches this.